everyone, and welcome to Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. Today, I have with me a very special guest. Now, I know I say that a lot about everybody, but no, this one, seriously, super special. It is Tyller Williamson, and he is not only an amazing Monterey local, as am I, but he's running for the mayorship. He's trying to be mayor of Monterey, which is super cool. And before we got together for this particular interview, you had no idea who I am. But I have been watching him as he has been rising through the ranks of being a civil servant. And I'm a huge fan. And I got the fortune of meeting him at the Prancing Ponies Women-Owned Cars car show during Monterey Car Week in August of 2022. And so finally, I had my opportunity to tell him how much of a fan I was and get him here for this interview. So welcome, Tyller Williamson.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here, and it was a pleasure to meet you. And I just got to say, I'm sorry for all the viewers for missing the before the scenes. No, it was,
yeah,
it's just been a pleasure to get this going here, and I'm really excited for the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, well, it's not every day that we have a person running for mayor on the show. So, but you know, you didn't just wake up one day when you were 3 years old saying, I want to be mayor of Monterey. Clearly, we have a history here. So if you don't mind going back to, you know, all right, not to when you were born, but like if you can give us a little bit of a history of how you got here.
That's a story, I'm telling you.
I know, right? I know. This could be the extra long interview if you allow it to be.
That's right. Yeah. So what got me here? You know, what I would say is that my mom served in the Navy for 20 years. So I was born in a naval hospital. So I will go back to the when I was born.
We love our Navy. It's all good.
I do. I've never lived anywhere away from a Navy base, which if you understand what that means, I've never lived away from the ocean.
Amen,
which
sir.
has been a really interesting experience for my life growing up. But here we are. I work at the Naval Postgraduate School now, probably because of that experience and association with the Navy. But anywhere I've ever lived, I've always been involved in the community. So I was in I participated in soup kitchens. I helped feed the homeless. I would, you know, walk and pick up trash in our communities. I joined Boy Scouts and I became Eagle Scout. Anywhere I've ever lived, I've always been involved in the community. So it wasn't any different when I moved to the Monterey Peninsula. And so if I could go back for a second before I come to Monterey, I was living in San Diego and I was going to community college at the time. And I had this professor who, you know, sometimes it's just the professor who you have. You may not necessarily like the subject matter, but it's just you have an awesome professor that teaches that subject very well. So I had this awesome professor. It was critical thinking, and we were talking about things like civil disobedience and civil rights movement. And I've learned all these things before, but it was this professor that was just teaching it in a way that really opened my mind. And at the same time, while this is going on, I see a person that looks like me that's running for president of the United States. So yes, this was in 2008 when Obama was running. And I will go back and just say that, you know, I never really was interested in politics before this. So when I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to help people. And so at the time I decided I want to be a doctor because that's really tangible. That's very hands-on. I know I can help people, you know, physically touch them and heal them. And so I was majoring in biochem when all this was happening. And at that moment in time, when I had this professor and when I saw Obama was running, I changed my major to political science and everything changed from there. So I signed up to volunteer on Obama's campaign. I signed up for an internship with my congressman down in San Diego, and Obama won election. Now, I'm happy to say that I'm part of it. I wouldn't say it was all because of me, but I was part of it.
Definitely a grassroots effort. Yes.
It was definitely a grassroots effort. And for those that may have a little bit of awareness about his campaign, it was all about community organizing. And that was just so cool for me to enter politics in that space. And so I didn't get as involved as I wanted to, though. I did a couple of different events, but I was going to school full time. I was working 2 jobs. So I didn't really have the capacity to step in the space that I wanted to, but I committed to myself that when 2012 came around, that I would get more involved. So by the time 2012 came around, I had moved to Monterey in 2010. And I went to his campaign website and I saw that there was a fellowship program that they were offering. So I signed up, I got accepted into that. I went to a 1-week training up in Hayward, and they told me at the end of the training, we want you to go back to Monterey County and create the first neighborhood team in the county, because nobody in the campaign had gotten anything going there yet. So I came back to Monterey, got the team going. It grew really quick. After 3 weeks of doing that, they came to me and they offered me a position on the campaign. And so I could go into some of the details here. I said no a couple of times because I was working, full-time. I was going to school full-time. And then I had just met these wonderful people in the community when I was trying to build relationships within my own community. So it was tough for me to say yes. So I said no the first 2 times that they asked. And then I had this opportunity to meet Obama. And that moment changed my life in a lot of ways. And on the way home, I went and volunteered at this fundraiser with my mom, and we're standing like 20 feet away from Obama this entire time. And so I'm standing 20 feet away from him, and I'm trying to go around to Secret Service. And I'm like, can I do one of these? Like, can I just do a selfie? And they're like, no, you can't. Only the official White House photographer or the campaign photographer can take a photo. And so I asked the lady that was in charge of us, and she said, I'll do my best. I can't make any promises, but we'll see what we can do. So he comes out, she's whispering in his ear. He looks at me, I damn near faint. And he comes up to my mom and I, we take our photo with him. We have our, 2 minutes with him, which was just completely life-changing for me. So on the way home, I get an email from the campaign, and they say, this is the last time we're going to offer the position to you. Will you accept it? I turned to my mom, I said, should I take it? She said, yes. So at that moment, I decided to accept the position. I took a leave of absence from school and work, and I was in charge of the campaign out of the San Francisco headquarters for the rest of the campaign season. And again, that moment was so life-changing, not only because of the obvious and me seeing Obama as one of my life heroes, but that was when I actually came out. So, and I think in a large way to myself. But then after the campaign was over, I came back to Monterey and I came out to my family, which was a process. But I don't think it would have happened if I wasn't placed, by the way, the campaign headquarters in San Francisco were smack dag in the middle of the Castro.
I was going to ask.
I'm seeing these beautiful men walk by all day. Of course it was in the Castro
district. That's where all the movers and shakers are. Come on. You don't see lazy people hanging out in the Castro district. No.
That's right. They're moving around. They're doing their thing.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay. If you don't mind, I'm so enamored with you. Oh my gosh. So the whole coming out, that takes some bravery. And you'd mentioned earlier before we officially started that you were in the Navy, and you were in the Navy during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So tell us a little bit about, when did you realize, and then when did you realize that you needed to be your authentic self, come hell or high water? And then, because I'm so proud of you. Before you start, I had to tell you, I'm sure my family will not be thrilled with me revealing this, but I had a grand aunt whom I absolutely adored, and she was the second in command of the Waves during World War II. She was an attorney, and she never married, but she had a roommate for 20 years. And, no one ever said anything, but like the writing was on the wall, and she drank herself to death. She was, very reclusive. We could tell, but there's a lot of people in denial. It's like, too bad that my favorite aunt, she couldn't just be herself and outwardly, openly. So I'm proud of you for standing on the shoulders of those that have come before you and standing out so bravely. So tell us a little bit about your journey, if you're comfortable sharing, and only if.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you sharing that story. And that's exactly what it is, because I wouldn't be able to stand here today and be who my authentic self is in the same way that I wouldn't have if these folks that stood before me fought the fight and went through all these horrible experiences that many queer people still do today, right? Particularly outside of the country, but even within the United States. So, and there's so many different nuggets within this, but before I jump into my story, I'll say one of the things that I do in my life is I help run Monterey Peninsula Pride. In the first year that we were hosting Pride in 2017, one of my volunteers handed me a note that we had received from a local student that wanted to attend Pride. And the note said, I wanted to be there, but my parents didn't allow me to come. So I just wanted to share this because, sharing how difficult it is to, be out and who I am. And that just moved me so much that I shared that with everybody in the audience that first year. But it just goes to show these experiences are still very real, particularly for young people that are in homes, that might be in homes that aren't accepting. And I would say for our elders too, that may have gone through the AIDS epidemic and having lost their chosen family and now finding themselves without people that are checking in on them and making sure that they're still good, which is pretty a challenging thing, as folks can imagine when you're coming of age. So,
Right.
So all that being said, after I graduated high school, I got accepted into the Naval Academy. I went to the prep school for a year. And then after that, I went to the actual Naval Academy. I was a plebe. And it was the only school that I had applied to. And my mom, as I was sharing earlier, was in the Navy, and I knew I wanted to go to college after high school. And so it was funny because when I was searching colleges, I typed in Navy school, and the Naval Academy was the first thing that popped up. And I had never heard about the Naval Academy before, but I was like, that's the school I want to go to. I get to achieve both of my life dreams. So I applied, I got accepted, and the experience was challenging. I'm not going to lie. And I think it is meant to be challenging. But I think there was some additional challenges from that experience that I probably wouldn't have had to go through if I wasn't queer. And what's interesting is like you were saying, it was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And what ended up happening was I failed Calculus 2 and Chemistry 2 in my my spring semester, my second semester of my freshman year. Because what happens is they identify your time split being 50% military, 50% academia. Well, my military side just took over so much of my life there, with getting demerits and having to do marching tours in the middle of the night, and just the disciplinary actions were stacking up in my response to those things. And I even had a senior during the end of the summer training. They were doing like skits and making fun of us, and then he would talk in a high-pitched voice as if I had a high-pitched voice and kind of taunting me for how I spoke. And it was just horrible. And not to say that it was something that I wasn't used to, because I had experience growing up in grade school dealing with somewhat similar things. But what made it challenging was just the regular standard challenges that you can imagine going through a military school on top of that. And so it was a challenge. So I got to my second semester, I failed those 2 classes. I had to go to an academic board, and at the academic board, all your senior leadership are there, and they're giving their pitch of whether they want you to stay or go. And they said, because I was in drum and bugle corps and glee club, and they said, all Midshipman Williamson wants to do is dance and sing. Well, damn right, that's all I want to do. But
oh man.
So they decided to kick me out, and it was a very tragic moment for me at the time. But I was thankful for the way that my life had played out, because I really don't think I would be here today doing the things that I'm doing if I didn't go through those experiences. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But what was interesting is I never realized that was an issue until I came out in 2012, when I was on the Obama campaign, and I started reflecting on that experience from when I was on the Naval Academy. I'm like, oh, that's what that was. So, because I just rejected it so much. I just rejected the idea of my sexuality being something different than straight. And so, it was a very tough time for me. But again, thankful for my experience on the Obama campaign for allowing that opportunity to present itself, and for me to be surrounded by people that were loving and accepting and just helped me figure out me for me. So I love them. I love those people.
And bravo to you. It's so cool. Thank you for sharing your very vulnerable story. We have all gone through something horrific, right? And what I love is that this could have crushed you. This could have made you suicidal. This could have done a lot of things to just make you want to run and hide, right? But here you are, you faced your demons, you became that authentic Tyler Williamson that you were always meant to be. You removed, I'm thinking of a lampshade, right? You removed the lampshade from the light, and now here you are. And what's so great is that you're absolutely right. Here we have you at the Naval Postgraduate School. I'm sure that you teach your students and treat them with such respect that you wish you
Absolutely.
had when you were at Annapolis, right? And
Absolutely.
and so in some ways this sadness brought about a way for you to make the world a better place, one student at a time. Yeah. How
Yeah.
exciting. How
Well,
exciting.
what's really interesting is that you made that connection with NPS. What's great is that I ended up still getting a degree from the Navy. I actually, because I work here, I'm able to take classes, and I ended up getting my master's degree from here. So it ended up all working out in the end of achieving my life goals, and
That's
I'm just
awesome.
thankful for the way that things turned out. So
I love it. You were just destined to live your best life. That is so exciting. So now, okay, so then you
totally,
started becoming city councilman. So you are currently city councilman for the city of Monterey. What got
that's
you
correct.
there? So clearly got involved with the Obama campaign. You got excited. So now, first question, do you get paid when you are in? Because I don't think that everybody gets paid. And so it truly is a passion for someone to run for office, because it's personal money that is spent. Yes, am I wrong on this? I don't know enough. I
Yeah. So
want you
we
to
get a
educate.
stipend.
Okay.
Yeah, we get a stipend. It's about $400 a month, but it definitely doesn't allow me to quit my day job. I'm working full time,
In one of the most
and
expensive
so
areas of the country. Yes, exactly.
yeah. So it's definitely more of a volunteer thing than it is about getting paid. But you're right; it's absolutely about passion. And what led me to here was so I left the Obama campaign in 2012 after obviously a successful reelection of President Obama. And then in 2017, I took those skills that I learned of community organizing during the Obama campaign and brought them back down to Monterey. And I helped co-found Monterey Peninsula Pride. So that first year, we just kind of threw it together. We didn't really have an organized space of raising money and trying to figure out what that looked like and how we were going to spend money and all the different pieces of working with the city to make it happen. But we made it happen, and there was over 700 people that first year, and it was wonderful because every year since we've been doing it, and there's churches, synagogues, LGBTQ plus organizations, healthcare organizations. There's a truck there that allows people to get tested for HIV and AIDS and hepatitis C, and over the years, we just developed such great relationships with different community stakeholders and organizations that want to be present there so that they have this representation of all the different services that are available to the queer community. So we want to continue to grow it. There's so much more that we wanted to do there, but I brought those skills there. And that was only one thing. I mean, that's just an example of one of the things that I was doing within the community. But because of this kind of deep embedded to me, this kind of idea of service and working in the community, I just started developing a lot of relationships with folks in the community and realizing that there was needs of the majority of residents that weren't being met. And I also realized that there was a lot of folks that were not really willing to step up and speak in council meetings or public meetings where decisions were being made about how our lives are affected as citizens. And so I had developed a relationship with folks, and they told me that I should run, and I embraced that idea, and I did it, and I just like, here we go, let's make it happen. And so that's kind of what ultimately led me to run. I'll share a little bit of my story, and I mean, there's so many different elements to
Your
it, but
story is so fascinating. Please, I'm not going to stop you. This is great.
so before I came up to Monterey, I was sharing that I was living in San Diego. I was going to community college at the time. This is after I left the Naval Academy. And I was living with two of my close friends down there. They were cousins. So we ended up getting evicted from our rental. and they were able to move back in with family. I didn't have any family in the area, and I struggled finding housing fast enough to be able to make that transition. So I ended up homeless. So the issue of housing is very personal to me. It's very close to home,
Mm.
and
It's not
homelessness
cheap.
is it's
Yeah.
not cheap, and homelessness is very much connected to the issue of housing and housing affordability. And so I've been hearing these conversations locally about not just the unaffordability of people that are currently housed, but just kind of seeing people in the unhoused community out in town, and what that looked like for people that might be empathetic towards them, or just hearing it from those that just kind of see it as a public nuisance to have folks being homeless in public spaces. These were kind of some of the things that really drove me to run in a lot of ways. And it was one of the main issues that I ran on when I ran for council in 2018. And that's been a big part of my focus since being on the council. But ever since being on the council, it allowed me to see so much of what the city can do and is in control of. There's so many different elements to water, to transparency in the community, to managing a budget, which is probably our most important job as a council. We have to approve an annual budget. And we're looking at a budget of around $180 million in the city of Monterey. So there's a lot of money on the line that affects a lot of people and their job, their living, and the services that are being provided in the community. So what I ran for is still much very core to who I am. But I've been able to see how many of the decisions that we make on the council just affect so many different elements of community. And I think there's so much more that we can do with that.
Oh, that's exciting stuff. And you're absolutely right that we do have quite the homeless population. Now, I walk around on the recreational trail almost daily. I'm always walking through the Presidio so I could cut over to where I'm bank in downtown. So I live in New Monterey. So just above Maddox and Nicole.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Hickman Avenue and Hans is catty corner to
Yes.
me. I can see his house. So like
That is funny.
all the cool kids live on Dickman Avenue. But truly, I walk around and I know the local homeless people. I don't talk to them specifically, but I can recognize them, and I know that they are kind, and I know that they are going through their own challenges, but nothing scary, right? And then we have the transient homeless, which are interesting. They come in during the bigger events, and then like Car Week came, and it's a fascinating thing. It's like, oh, look, everyone's there, including, so it must be an interesting thing to try to solve. And then also too, I mean, think about all the working homeless. They're working long hours, and they still cannot make enough to pay rent. And it's phenomenal. One of these people has been in my Toastmasters group, and he's done some amazing speeches about, he has a home now, but he did this great speech on he lived in his Mirage, the Mirage model.
Mhm.
Was it a Dodge, Mitsubishi Mirage?
Yep.
But then the whole point of the speech was how he was a Mirage, because he was always trying to lay low and not be seen. So it was an interesting name of the car, because it was so poignant. But
Yeah.
you're right. Like, how are we solving it? And how, because I mean, let's face it, if you're going to be homeless, Monterey's a pretty sweet place to be. Not too hot, not too cold. You got water right there.
Absolutely.
Great food.
Yeah, we have a little slice of paradise here.
Yeah.
And we're definitely fortunate. Yeah, no, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just what people see as far as what makes up the homeless population. There's so much to it. There's people sleeping in their cars. There's people that are ashamed, trying to stay out of sight, out of mind. I mean, when I reflect on my experience, and I was only homeless for about a month and a half, but it's like you're thinking about, where am I going to take a shower? Where am I going to get a warm meal? Where am I going to use the restroom? You're just trying to figure out how to survive day to day, like the very basics.
Mhm.
Never mind trying to figure out how do you get out of that experience. And anecdotally, there's municipality after municipality throughout the country that have shown, and studies have shown, that the way that we reduce the homeless numbers is by implementing a housing first model. So the idea of that, for those that aren't aware, is we say permanent housing first, right? We don't do transitional housing because the idea there is that the homeless population knows that it's not permanent. And so they're going to have to figure out what are they going to do once they lose that housing. So let's provide them permanent housing. Let's eliminate uh, the lack of shelter as a barrier towards them moving forward on their life. And then you provide them wraparound services and you give them opportunities to look for a job, look for employment, get drug rehabilitation services, have access to a therapist or a counselor. You give them access to these services for free of charge so that they can work on trying to figure out what those next steps look like for themselves. So housing first, it's been proven to be successful. There was a New York Times article in Houston. They just did it recently, and I think that they reduced their homeless population somewhere around 67%, which is remarkable. And there was another piece of it that I'm really interested in that I think allowed their success in Houston, which was collaboration. So there's multiple layers of government agencies, there's nonprofit organizations, there's the private sector, there's all these different stakeholders that want to have a stake in the game in regards to solving this issue, but there was never leadership in regards to bringing all these stakeholders together so that there could be a space for collaboration and working together to really solve these issues. So if you think about a homeless veteran as an example, they have these opportunities to apply for all these services. But again, they're just trying to survive every day, never mind having the capability to understand how do you contact the VA and apply for these services and the local services that might be available at a local level. So I think we need that leadership that's just so important to pull us together. I mean, if you think about it, for Monterey County, we have our small little cities. The city of Monterey is 30,000 people. The city of Sand City is like 500 people. You have these cities that are just so small. We really need to be working together on this, but everything is just so disjointed and there's not a lot of collaboration happening. And so that's actually one of the things that I'm hoping that we can do if I'm fortunate enough to be elected mayor.
Well, you remind me of something that Chuck De La Sala did when he was mayor, and that was consolidate all the fire departments. So all the cities had their own little fire department. Sand City did rent the services of Seaside. That's how they got their fire department. But ultimately, and I remember because I was heavily active in marketing for a construction company that worked with the fire departments. After a house would catch fire or whatever, there was some restoration work, or maybe a car drove through a plate glass window and there was some restoration work. So I remembered listening to what the firefighters were talking about. It's like, oh, consolidation, that's horrible, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know what? It's actually kind of cool because like now you have united front when it comes to a major fire or different health things. And, if the city of Monterey is in need of additional engines on site for something, that's okay, because you don't have to ask Pacific Grove and Carmel for permission anymore. You can just, it's part of the bigger group. So no, I think you're absolutely right. The leadership that you are intending to provide once you, and who knows, you could probably still do this even when you aren't mayor.
Absolutely.
Right? But I applaud you for your efforts, because it is a challenge, especially when you consider we are in such a beautiful piece of paradise that is expensive. And I know a lot of people have the not in my backyard mentality. I mean, gosh, tiny homes, right? All you see here are tiny homes, because that's pretty much the size of our homes around here. I'm in 900
right.
square feet. How about you?
Me
I don't know.
too. Same
Yeah,
size,
yay.
908. I have 908
Yay.
square feet.
Oh, yay. You got extra space. But hey, I love the fact that I can clean the house top to bottom in like 2 hours.
That's right.
Max. I
That's
mean, it
right.
doesn't take me all weekend. It just takes me 2 hours, right? And that's pretty thorough cleaning, right?
That's right.
No, I loved it when I was listening to what the planning commission was doing, and there was a whole convention of people from planning commissions all over the state, and they were talking about tiny homes, and it was a big deal, like 2014, 2015, like, ooh, tiny homes, tiny homes. And the people, especially in Pacific Grove, were like,
Mhm.
my tiny home is worth $1 million something. You know what I mean? Like, no, you know, so it is a fascinating thing, but keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. So I'm going to continue
Thank
some other
you.
questions because oh my God, I could totally be on this call with you for like forever. But let's talk about, because we know a lot of what makes you special and unique. That's like a big question. But what I want to know is there's and maybe you've answered it, but I really want to ask it directly. We all have a choice to get out of bed every day, right? And sometimes we just don't want to get out of bed because, you know, there's nothing really calling us, right? But those of us that are motivated to change the world, there's a why. And I think you've shared some of it, but maybe there's something deeper. What is the thing that has you taking these big risks? I mean, you're kind of building your platform on something that isn't really popular, right? And so you're kind of like, I love your authenticity. You are doing stuff that's perfect for you, and that may not float well with everyone, but there's a reason why behind that. What is that? What is that why for you, Tyler?
I just want us all to get along.
I love that. I
I
love
mean,
that.
no, truly, we live on one planet together. We live in one town together. This is us. We have to figure this out together, and we can't partition a group out and say your voice doesn't matter, and or say that, hey, I have level and influence, and I want it to stay the same because I'm getting what I want. We all don't benefit if we're not all engaged in that process. And frankly, if we truly live in a democracy, it requires us to be involved in the political process. So for me, the transparency piece and the public engagement piece is probably the most important part. I have my beliefs in how I see the world, and it's nothing personal against how somebody else, we all see the world differently. And so I will make the best decisions that I can, but I can't make the best decisions if I'm not hearing from folks. So I need to be able to engage with the community, hear from the various perspectives. 66% of Monterey residents are renters. We don't hear from renters too often on the city
No, we
council.
don't.
So if we're not hearing from renters, we're not hearing from the majority of our residents. And an argument could be made that there are a big portion of these that are military personnel and that are maybe graduates, students at Miss. But still, that leaves a huge portion of that percentage that I would argue that still are true, through and true
15
local
years.
people.
Yep. And
So,
going strong. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. Yeah, I'm with you.
and
Maddox
I
is a
have,
renter. Nicole's a
that's right.
renter. You're a renter. Gosh, there are so
Well,
many people, so many business owners, Cannery Row, Lighthouse Avenue, renters. Yeah.
well, and so full disclosure, I'm a homeowner, but
I'm so proud of
I,
you. Lucky
but
boy.
all the more reason for me to step forward because of my place of privilege, right? Like it's important for folks that are so fortunate enough to have a place where they don't have to worry about something like having a roof over your head, which, to be honest, there are homeowners that have that issue as well, right? If you're on a fixed income senior, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so many different situations that we need to make sure that we're stepping up from a place where we might have a little bit more security. And so all that being said, and this isn't to say that let's not listen to homeowners too.
Oh,
It's homeowners and renters. It's listening to everybody in the community because everybody has a stake in the game, and everybody has a reason why their values are coming from a certain place. But if we're not listening to those conversations, or allowing those conversations to happen in the first place, then we're doomed to fail. We're not doing our job to be a public agency. So I think that's kind of what wakes me up allows me to get up out of bed. And I'm super, I think that's what people want. I think that there's so much opportunity there. And so I'm enthusiastic about making that happen. And I think part of my personality is just being really good about getting things going. And I don't want to make it about me. I want to make it about the community. So if I can help create that opportunity, that experience to help bring different stakeholders together from various perspectives, I think that's a win for the entire community. So I'm super excited for what we can do.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm glad that you mentioned that one thing. I do remember several years ago, there was a Nextdoor was still that new app. And there was a message that went out like, hey, let's have a new Monterey association. Let's all meet at Gianni's Pizza and all get to know each other and be part of this association. So I show up, Maddox and Nicole show up, and several homeowners, and we're talking. And I'm sure she meant well, but when the women attending was like, oh, you guys are renters. Oh, we really want this association to be for homeowners. And it's just like,
Wow.
well, hold up. Like, we've
We're
been
part
here
of
a
the
long
community too.
time. We're planning on,
Mhm.
we're part of the neighborhood. Like we're the ones walking on the trail just like you. We pay our, like, it's like, okay. And so I was turned off by that attitude, because it's like, well, then I'm not going to be offering, because as soon as they find out that I'm a marketer, they want, of course, me to do all my marketing for
Of
free.
course.
No, and no, that's how I make my living. We do not give that
That's
away
right.
for free. So I was really turned off and like, yeah, with that attitude, you're not getting anything out of me.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was a shame, because I showed up. I wanted to be part of something. But then because you're not a homeowner, well, thanks. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really disappointing to hear. I mean, because I can imagine how that can make somebody feel, right? And that kind of just feeds that idea of, why should I be involved and engaged if they're not focusing on the issues that are important to me? In fact, they don't even want me here.
Right. But also too, like, I do understand, especially since COVID, which we're seeing a lot of people reassess where they live and how much it costs. And I have so many friends, I'm sure you're similar, that are from California, and they have chosen to move to Idaho, Texas, Florida, somewhere cheaper, right? And
Mhm.
they're like, oh, it's so expensive and I have limited income and I got to stretch my dollars. But then, Tyler, when they have that horrible storm or that tornado, or they're in Texas and the power grid isn't working, I gotta
That's right.
believe that they're going to be wishing because I mean, we really do. We have an amazing community. We have beautiful weather. Yeah, it's expensive, but you get what you pay for, right?
It's true.
And
This is
so
true.
when there are tax voting, when I don't know how to say it, when there are voting opportunities to where it's like, oh, do we want to charge a little extra to pay for this? Or do we want to have a bond for this? I'm like, yes, I'm happy to do that. Yes, I'm happy to be a taxpayer that pays for it. But I wonder sometimes if maybe the homeowners are the ones that get a little bit more squeezed than we renters are. But anyway.
Well,
um,
I would argue, I wonder if that's a good thing. I mean,
oh,
right, if people are able to purchase an asset as expensive as a home in Monterey,
mm,
I'm almost certain, and they're probably in a better financial situation than somebody that tends to be a renter.
mm,
Um, and that's not to say that some people are a renter because they choose to be. Those folks exist. Um, but I would argue that the fair majority of people that are renters aren't renters by choice. They're renters because they are not able to afford to purchase a home. And so I think that's a good, I think there might be value in getting the revenue stream in a way that doesn't over impact those that are already struggling, and
got
to
it.
fund these really important things in our community. I mean, and it depends on what it is too, what type of tax that you do. So that's a deeper conversation, but
That's true, huh? Okay, another interview for another time, right?
yeah.
Also, too, now I hope you don't mind, because I'm so curious about this. I love Monterey because I personally see Monterey as a beautifully diverse area. I think our community is so diverse. And what I mean by that is, a block of me away is the Defense Language Institute, the Monterey Presidio, right? So we've got people from all over the world teaching their language, Arabic, Russian, all kinds of amazing, beautiful languages, Korean, like all kinds, right? And, we benefit in our community because a lot of them also own restaurants. So we get to have Afghan cuisine or, just halal food. Oh my gosh, so much great food, right? So I think of that. And then also too, maybe it's because of this adorable neighborhood. I find all the different colors of the rainbow in this neighborhood. I see white, I see black, I see Asian, I see Latino. I see this beautiful blend. So I personally, being the local and making sure that I look out amongst my beautiful neighbors, I'm like, wow, we're so diverse. And it was so interesting. I was reading an article a while back about Zoe Kravitz, one of the stars in that show. And I never watched it. It was with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole
Oh
Kidman.
yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
little?
yeah.
It was a Big
The
Little
Big
Lies or
Little
Little Big
Lies.
Lies or something.
Yep.
That one.
Yep.
Everyone who watches that show is like, Jen, get it right. I'm sorry, people. I just don't watch TV. But but I remembered that Zoe Kravitz. Here she is. She is Hollywood royalty, right? She is Hollywood royalty, being the daughter of Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet, and then like her stepdad is Jason Momoa. I mean, hello. Like, if you can't get any more royal than that, I don't know who.
That's right.
But admittedly, not everyone knows who she is and knows what she looks like, because only now is she starting to come into her own as a star, right? But I saw this article about how she was saying, Monterey is just so white, and I didn't feel welcome here. And I was like, what? What? Our little community did not make her feel what? So as a man who has come from San Diego and has lived all over, would you mind speaking to that? Am I rose-colored glasses here? Is it really not as diverse as I think it is? Or, how does it feel to be a person of color, a beautiful person of color living here on this peninsula? Is it safe? Do you feel comfortable, or are you kind of feeling like, ooh, yeah, we can improve? And if so, how can our allies improve? How can we improve and make the world a better place for everybody?
Yeah. So I'm big on data. I like to look at numbers. And if we look at our census data from the last decade, census data, it showed that we were somewhere around 80% white in the city of Monterey.
Really?
The latest census data shows, I think, somewhere around 76% white. So it's getting a little bit more diverse, but it's still very predominantly white in the city of Monterey. And so, yeah, I mean, the data speaks for itself in a lot of ways. And I think there's a reason why that is, especially when we think about what happened with Fort Ord and Fort Ord closing down. And it provided an opportunity for a lot more, particularly Black people, to move to this area. And even if we look at what's going on in Seaside, their Black population has decreased over time because it's just very hard for, particularly of people of color, to be able to stay in this area. When we look at things like housing affordability, people that have already been ostracized in the society, we can expect them to be the ones that are lower income, finding housing insecurity issues. So it's not surprising to see these issues still exist. And again, when we're not listening to folks from that segment of the population, when we're not, as a public agency, when we're not being intentional about making sure that we're hearing their voice in the discourse and the conversations that are affecting those communities, then of course we're not going to make decisions that are making sure that we're taking care of them along with everybody else in the community. So that isn't to say that there isn't, and when I have these conversations with folks, it can seem a little bit doom or gloom, and my intention isn't to do that. My intention is to focus on how can we do things better. But I will pause here for a second and just say there are a lot of great things, right, about being in the city of Monterey. I chose to live here. We bought our home here because we love it here. So there's a lot of good things to appreciate. about the city of Monterey. I just think that there is
better.
this rub. There is this rub where if we
Okay.
can't acknowledge that space where we can do better, then we're not going to get better. But we are the language capital of the world because of the Defense Language Institute. The Naval Postgraduate School has international students that attend our programs. We have a lot of Hispanics within the community. They tend to work low-wage jobs in the hospitality industry. But again, there's a race relations issue there that's not discussed. How can we focus on paying people a living wage so that they can't afford the cost of living here? And if environmental issues are so important to a huge constituency within our communities, then I think we would be focusing on how do we provide housing for these folks closer to where their jobs are so that we can lower greenhouse gas emissions. So all these things are connected: transportation, housing, economic development. All these issues are connected. And I think very much the center line of all of these issues is race relations and what that looks like historically for our country, and how we move forward. It's a really tough conversation for me to have to my constituents because I'm a Black person, and I can speak authentically about my experience, but how was that received? There's a really great group in the community, and this will be my last point on this one. There's a really great group in the community called Whites for Racial Equity, and the purpose of why they exist is to do the work of racial equity because they don't feel like people of color should be doing it, right? Because they're not the ones that cause this problem. It's the privilege that's provided to whites that allow for a shared conversation, a shared dialogue on that issue, to help kind of move that conversation forward. So I really love their mission and what they do. And there's just super wonderful people in our community doing that work.
Well, I want to connect with them because I am
Yeah,
an ally and I want to do more. So great.
I love it.
Thank you for speaking on that. And speaking of which, I recently signed up for a Kickstarter program to buy a game for just $35. I think with shipping, it's like the grand total is $44. It's called The Disparity Trap. It's a board game where you play, but the odds are against you. And you get to feel what it's like for the people that are less privileged. So I can't wait to get that thing. Let's have a board game, shall we?
I would love that.
It's meant to be a conversation starter.
Yes.
And showing us how we can understand by walking in the shoes of a board game, right? And then having the conversation. I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that so much.
Game night with
Yes. Yes, let's do it. I'm so down.
The Disparity Trap. Seriously. Like, who knows? Maybe we could have we could purchase several of the games, right? And just have like a whole community thing where like different groups are like playing it, and then we can all have like a group discussion. Like it could be really cool. It could be really cool.
Yeah. I love that. I would really love that.
Community game night with Jen and Tyler.
Let's make it a thing.
Right
I just think I think these are the types of things that make those experiences that allow folks to engage, kind of making it fun, right? Getting people to think about it, be socialized. These are things that we need in our community to kind of connect with our neighbors. So I'm down for it.
Yeah, totally. I have another game. Like, have you heard of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad books?
What is it?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a book that Robert Kiyosaki wrote about how to improve your financial education and your wealth through real estate. So he created a game called the Cash Flow Game. And so there's a group of real estate investors that I hang out with, and we do it online. And it's so cool because the goal of the game is to get out of the rat race and to have more assets than what you have via salary. And then once you have more assets paying you than your salary, then you can get out of the rat race and then go, invest in bigger things. So it's kind of cool. So games are really, it doesn't always have to be about Minecraft.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great way to build community and to educate yourself and to just have these really cool conversations like, oh, this choice makes me go down this path, and this choice, it's so cool. So yeah, game night.
I love
Let's
it.
do it.
I love it so much.
So I'll wrap up with you here. What are some pieces of advice you have? I mean, gosh, you come from such a wealth of background and all kinds of stuff. So what advice do you have for the listeners?
Hmm.
And you can break this down, how to come out, how to run for mayor,
I know there's a lot of different things in there.
how to
No,
host community events.
I think it's a good question. I think my thing at the end of the day is, how do we get people more involved and engaged? And I think you were speaking to something earlier. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Oh, when you had went to that new Monterey neighborhood association event and that individual said something that turned you off. I think that there's, in my mind, these present opportunities for us to step up. And what does that look like? I guess it could mean different things. Do we create our own group, or do we try to find a way of pushing back against that and saying, no, I want to be in a leadership position and I want to try to change the way that we look at this in the new Monterey Neighborhood Association. So I think that we need folks to step up and make it what we want it to be. And I know that that's really hard when the folks that are in power are focusing on issues that aren't important to us. And we go to a council meeting and they're not listening to the things that we're saying. We might try to advocate for something and they make a decision that's different than that. So I would just advocate that stick with it, get out there, get involved, try to pull out your neighbors, your friends, your family, work together to try to figure out what that looks like. But it's so important because that's community, that's making change, that's how change happens. And I would add to this here and say that all politics is local, right? So a lot of us pay attention to what's happening at the national level, and we have very little impact on that, but we have an impact locally and we can make a difference. And so I just ask folks, if they can, to try to get involved with my campaign. If you believe in the values that I believe in, you believe with what I stand for, because, I feel like we can make a difference if we do this together. So I think that's my takeaway message for everybody.
I love it. Well, count me in. I'm happy to support you.
I love
But
that. Thank you.
boy, this has been fun, Tyler. I know we have to eventually end this. Everybody who's watching, thank you so very, very much for hanging with us. I mean, we really did take the full hour, but isn't Tyler amazing? So if you want to learn more about Tyler Williamson, okay, Tyler, give us all the contact. How do we find you, please?
Yeah. So my campaign website is tylerformonterey.org. That's Tyler with 2 L's, but even if you get it with the 1 L, we have both domains. So we'll make sure that you get there. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm everywhere. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And when is the election for mayor?
November 8th. Make sure you vote.
November 8th, 2022. There you go.
That's right.
And let's see, how many people are running for mayor here in Monterey? Is it a
There's
good
2.
number? There's 2.
Yeah. There's 2 of us. So one of my colleagues on the council and then myself. So
okay. Well, at least it isn't 10. So there you go. Your odds are 50-50. That's good.
Right. That's right.
No, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you. And you know what? I have a really good feeling for you.
Me
and
too.
You know what? Even if, right? Remember, what was it? Bernie Sanders ran for several things, and now look at him. He's just it's amazing. He's been doing this.
That's right.
Young. So are you going to be doing this until you're a silver fox?
We'll see. I don't know.
Hey, following Obama's footsteps, he became a silver fox. Love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much for watching. We appreciate you. And until next time, bye.
Thanks, Jen. Bye, everybody.